I'm Pamela Brown in Washington. Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. You are in the CNN newsroom on this Saturday, and it's great to have you along with us. Well, it looks like we are poised for liftoff as summer approaches. America is finally reopening. Finally, some good news on the COVID front. According to the CDC, 38% of the U.S. population is now fully vaccinated against coronavirus. And we have more good news to share. The number of cases week over week is falling in at least 37 states. Now, after more than a year of life under lockdown, many people are returning to their schools and their workplaces, not to mention their long-lost favorite hangouts. And as Memorial Day approaches, signaling the unofficial start of summer, many of us can't wait to hit the road for vacation. CNN's Natasha Chin is in Atlanta, so tell me what you're seeing there in Atlanta, Natasha.
Well, Pamela, it is a beautiful Saturday afternoon. A lot of people out along the Beltline, which is the path going through much of the city. There's so many people. In fact, there are a couple of traffic jams there. Of course, in Georgia, it has been relatively open in the past few months, which is different from some states across the country that have been more restrictive and are just now starting to plan full reopening in the coming couple of months.
Sun's out, masks off. All across America, more and more people are seeing each other's faces for the first time in a long time.
It's been a long time coming.
More than 45% of people in the U.S. age 12 or older are now fully vaccinated. And 3 states, Connecticut, Maine, and Vermont, have fully vaccinated at least half of their total population. For the first time since March of 2020, San Francisco General Hospital reported 0 COVID patients. The 7-day average of new cases in the U.S. is below 30,000 for the first time in almost a year. With this progress comes relaxation of rules. New York venues are expanding capacity limits just in time for the Knicks to start their first playoff game, with 15,000 seats already sold.
This is what we've been waiting for, New York. To bring the culture back, to bring the spirit back to New York.
And California will drop capacity limits and social distancing requirements when the state fully reopens on June 15th.
I think it's about time.
Yeah, I think we've been ready for it for a while.
Entertainers are preparing for in-person events, even if there will be a few adjustments.
Yeah, I've been vaccinated. I mean, obviously, you would like for everybody to go and get vaccinated. Yeah, I think it's going to be a little different, because we're used to reaching out, touching so many people. I think that'll be a little bit scarce, if not fist bump. But, I mean, we'll find other ways to feed off the energy of the crowd.
But some people aren't ready to bounce back to pre-COVID habits. Personal trainer David Nasick is seeing a lasting shift in how he sees some of his clients.
They don't want to go back into the gym environment. They feel more comfortable just being one-on-one in their own homes. So it's been actually good for me with my in-home business.
On a sunny day in Atlanta, these stunt performers were practicing in a group after more than a year of training alone.
Honestly, I still kind of feel iffy about it. I still am sketched out about being out here, but yeah, I can't stay at home all the time.
Health experts worry about what happens when hot weather drives people indoors this summer, especially in some states where vaccination rates are lower.
I still wear a mask at work just because I work with public. So even though I'm fully vaccinated, I feel like I don't know if they are or not, so I feel like it's still good to have it on.
Your whole store got hit too.
Yeah, my whole work caught it back in December, so that was great. It was a terrible experience having it.
And he's not able to ask customers if they've been vaccinated. Even with an honor system that is far from foolproof, there's a sense the country has turned a corner.
It's like a hopeful moment, a rare hopeful moment in a year full, past couple of years, it's been a lot of really bad news.
Natasha.
And more hopeful news now. A study by Public Health England shows that 2 doses of either the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine or the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine are highly effective against the variant first seen in India. Dr. Anthony Fauci did say yesterday that he's preparing for the possibility that people getting vaccinated will need a booster shot, but health experts are unsure if and when that may happen. Pamela.
All right, Natasha Chin, live for us in Atlanta. Thanks so much, Natasha. Well, tonight, new videos obtained by CNN show the events that led to the death of Ronald Green, a black man in police custody back in 2019. And we want to give you this warning. Some of the images you are about to see are very disturbing. His mother, Mona Hardin, and Lee Merritt, an attorney representing Green's family. Thank you both for coming on. I know this is such an emotional time for you.
Thank you for having us.
And it has been an emotional time, Mona, for you ever since your son died 2 years ago. These videos are so difficult to watch. I can only imagine as a mother what that was like for you, watching your son's death play out like that on video. When you first saw the video, how did it make you feel?
I was in total shock. I know I'm still in shock. Just trying to, I don't even know if absorbing it is bringing it into reality that this has happened to my son. Grief-stricken isn't the word. It's horrific. It's so evil.
Louisiana Patrol released a total of 9 videos last night. This was only after the AP first obtained video of your son being tased and suffering at the hands of police. Were you aware of this additional video evidence showing how your son was treated by police?
Yes, I was aware. I always knew when they showed it to us last year, September. I knew there was more to it. They didn't give it to us. I did ask at the time, where's the rest of it? And why are we looking at footage with no sound to it? That's how it all happened. And the fact that this has played out the way it has as of yesterday, because there's so much noise behind it, the integrity behind it all is it's really questionable how and why. In 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many questions after your son's death 2 years ago. Just to be clear, so a year and a half ago, state officials showed you some video, but it didn't have sound. Can you walk us through what you saw then compared to what is being released now, just to make sure we have a clear understanding?
What I did see then was, it wasn't the beginning. I did not see the beginning of it. I did see, and it was under which I agreed to the suggestion of my lawyers, because of what they saw before me. What I did see was him he was behind the driver's, the driving the steering wheel, and the film footage was from the passenger door looking in, and he was attacked from there on. I saw that he was going to leave, not alive.
I'm sorry, say that last bit again, Mona?
What I saw was that he was not meant to leave alive. He was going to be killed.
You believe he was murdered.
Without a doubt.
Tell us, I want to bring you in to help explain to us how you believe this new video will help get you justice for Mr. Green, and the discrepancy between what the police story was and what this new video shows.
Well, we've seen a pattern in this country, an unfortunate pattern, when law enforcement alone are the only persons with access to critical evidence like this kind of video. And the process is to minimize the conduct, to keep it out of the eyes of the public, and to protect the police officers. However, when this video is made public, typically by camera footage or cell phone footage, like in the case of George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery, but even when that video the cell phone video is controlled by individuals. Once it gets out into the hands of the public, that public pressure turns out to be very effective in holding in moving elected officials to hold police officers accountable. So that's what we're looking forward to in this case.
So what do you think would have happened if the AP hadn't obtained this video initially showing Mr. Green tased and seemingly beaten and tortured by police?
I think what would have happened is what has happened. It's been 2 years, and there's been a 50-hour suspension and no other punishment for any of the several officers involved or the supervisors who condoned the behavior. But for this leak, that would have been the end of the Ronald Green story, that, Trooper Corey York received a 50-hour suspension and went right back to work. Lieutenant John Cleary, who condoned the behavior and instructed the men to leave Mr. Green on his belly in a prone position, would have gone without discipline, as he so far has. We're still waiting for accountability from him. And then Trooper Dakota DeMoss would have gone unpunished as well. That has been the story up until this point, but I believe that this family and our office is ready to fight to change that narrative.
If you would, Mona, take us back to the beginning and tell us what police initially told you and what this journey has been like for you seeking justice, trying to find out the truth about your son's death.
What they initially told me, that behind a long chase, Ronnie crashed his car into a tree, and he died there of head wounds. And as far as the journey of where this has gone, it's really a bad nightmare. It's unreal. It's horrific how this has played out, how it's stretched out to one shut door, no answers, no nothing, false leads here and there, or I'll call you, and no one's ever called. I was told when we were there 9 days, that they would get a hold of us as soon as the investigation was over, and no one ever called. It was me calling them.
That is unacceptable. I think that everyone can agree with that. Just very quickly. Mona, as you look at the big picture, sadly, your son is not the only one who has died at the hands of police. We're approaching the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's death. Do you believe that this is a case of a few bad apples in the police force, or do you think that this is a systemic problem?
It's definitely systemic problems, because when you talk about a few bad apples, you're talking about a few. Systemic racism, the way it's been played out and how it's been for so many years, there's no other way you can paint this picture on the fact that it's systemic racism. There's no such thing as few bad apples when you go into 2 years. There's more than that because they've been helped and aided along the way.
Okay, Mona Hardin, I'm so sorry about your loss and how difficult it has been for you to get basic answers about your son's death. I'm sorry. And Lee Merritt, thank you for coming on. We'll continue to cover this story.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for having us.
And a reminder, if you want insight into the role of race and culture, politics, and more, sign up for CNN's Race Deconstructed newsletter at cnn.com/race newsletter. Well, first, it was one of his closest friends, and now Matt Gaetz' ex-girlfriend is cooperating with the feds as they investigate sex trafficking allegations. That's coming up later this hour. Also ahead, Prince Harry blasts the media and the palace for trying to, quote, smear his wife, Meghan. But first, Democratic Senator Tina Smith has some choice words for her colleagues across the aisle who are blocking a commission to probe the Capitol riot. She joins me live up next.
I've made the decision to oppose the House Democrats' slanted and unbalanced proposal for another commission to study the events of January the 6th. It's not at all clear what new facts or additional investigation yet another commission could actually lay on top of existing efforts by law enforcement and Congress.
So after months of talks and a deal that seemed imminent, the bill to create a bipartisan independent commission to investigate the January 6th Capitol riot fueled by the big lie now appears to be all but dead. 10 Senate Republicans would need to go against their own party to make it happen. But right now, even the 7 who voted to convict President Trump in his impeachment for inciting the insurrection are split. My guest, Democratic Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota, well, she is not impressed by the GOP's reluctance. She tweeted, "Sometimes in this job, you have to make tough decisions. Like, for instance, should you investigate thousands of people trying to stop an election by storming the Capitol, or should you not?" Senator Smith joins me now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Pamela. It's really great to be with you.
So I want to talk about this battle over the commission in just a moment. But first, let me get to this new controversy involving Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. And it's that something that her fellow House Republican Liz Cheney called, quote, evil lunacy. Watch as Greene compares the mask requirement in Congress to being a Jew in the Holocaust.
You know, we can look back in a time in history where people were told to wear a gold star, and they were definitely treated like second-class citizens, so much so that they were put in trains and taken to gas chambers in Nazi Germany. And this is exactly the type of abuse that Nancy Pelosi is talking about.
Exactly the type of abuse. What is your reaction to that?
Well, this person seems to be willing to do or say anything in order to get attention. The words that she's using here, what she is saying, the comparison that she is attempting to make is so deeply disrespectful, so deeply disconnected from history. And it is shocking to me that she would say this. I think that it is just such a terrible example of how some people like Marjorie Taylor Greene will say anything to get attention. And what we ought to be focusing on is how to bring ourselves back together rather than using these ridiculous and deeply hurtful things like she's saying.
And one area where there was a thought that there could be both sides coming together on was this bipartisan commission that was negotiated between Democrats and Republicans. And yet you had 16 Republicans who initially supported a bill that was very similar to what was laid out in this bill back in right after the insurrection defect and vote against it. Senator Richard Burr, a Republican who voted to impeach Donald Trump, but voted against this commission, he said that basically this bill wasn't fair, that this commission wasn't fair. What do you say to people like him, to McConnell, who say, look, there are already congressional committees with jurisdiction looking into this. We don't need this commission. What would this new commission do that the committees can't?
Well, I think that this is just ridiculous. I mean, truly, we had an armed insurrection, an attack on our capital. Lives were lost. Police officers' lives were lost. And we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to understand exactly what has happened. And we need to understand what role, if any, the White House played, what role, if any, members of Congress played in this attack, worst attack on our capital since the Civil War. To say that an independent commission, which we used during the 9/11 attack on our country, is not needed at this time, I just flatly don't understand. And you got to ask yourself, why is it that people don't want to have this commission? Why is it that some of my colleagues don't want this commission? I mean, certainly we have committees in Congress that are investigating this, and that is a good thing. But to have an independent commission that would have the respect of the whole country, get to the bottom of this, I think is really important. And I think it's a shame that people are afraid of what that commission might uncover.
Right. And the majority, as we know, of Republicans voted against it. 35 in the House voted for it. Republicans have not, in the Senate, have not voted, obviously, and Democrats. But it appears to be dead on arrival there. House Republicans defied Kevin McCarthy to vote for the commission, the one that I mentioned, helping Democrats easily win passage in that chamber. But then I mentioned those 16 House Republicans who co-sponsored the bill turned and then voted no. And this opposition from McCarthy and McConnell seemed to come at the last minute. What do you believe is behind that?
Well, I can't look into their hearts and minds, but what I know is what I know because I was there. And I sat on the Senate floor and I listened to several of my colleagues talk about how horrible the events of January 6th were. And to hear them now just backing away as if they just don't even want to deal with it. You cannot sweep this under the rug. In order to make sure that something like this never happens again, we have to get to the bottom of it. You know, we have learned in our country that if you look away, if you pretend that something didn't happen, it's going to come back and get you again. And we just cannot tolerate that.
I want to play something for you that Congresswoman Stephanie Bice posted on Twitter. Now, I want to point out to our viewers that she is one of the House Republicans who voted yes on this commission, but let's listen to some of her rationale.
First and foremost, I will not let this commission be a witch hunt by Nancy Pelosi. The purpose of the commission is not to go after former President Trump, but to find out why the Capitol Police and sergeants at arms were so unprepared. There are important questions that must be answered about Nancy Pelosi's involvement in the decision to deny an activation request for the D.C. National Guard to protect the Capitol.
And just a fact check, there is no evidence supporting that she denied the decision to activate the National Guard at the time. But what is your reaction to what we just heard from that member of Congress?
Well, what I think is missing from her comments is that what Speaker Pelosi did as she put together these proposals for the commission is that she listened to the concerns of the Republicans in the House and she adapted. She made changes to ensure that this commission would be completely nonpartisan. And I respect her for that. I think that that's what Americans want. So again, I think this effort to rewrite history, to try to change the facts on the fly to benefit your political party is frankly just exactly the opposite of what we need. I just think it's undemocratic.
Before we let you go, Senator, I want to point out that this is Mental Health Awareness Month. We cover a fair amount of mental health stories on this show. I've been open about my own struggles. You've spoken openly about your battles with depression. Tell us about your personal experience and what you plan to do in your position as a senator to help others who are struggling.
Well, you know, I'd always been open with my experiences with depression when I was a young woman in college and then a little later when I was a young mother. But when I came to the Senate, I realized that there was value in sharing that story more broadly because so many people struggle with some form of mental health challenge or mental illness at some point in their lives. And sometimes people who are in positions of power and authority, like you or like me, are seen as being invincible, never having a problem or care in the world. And to share that, I think, helps people to understand that it happens to everybody in one way or another. And that, I hope, will give people strength to face whatever challenges they have in their own lives. And then, of course, we got to turn that knowledge and understanding into action, which is what my job is now in the Senate with the legislation that I'm pushing to expand access to mental health care for students in school and to get more mental health providers out where they're so needed.
and just reducing the stigma in general. I think this pandemic really shined a spotlight on this. I think a lot of people may have not realized they had mental health issues and then realized once they had to kind of sit at home, be alone, that maybe they did. As you know, you mentioned you had it after you were a mother. I've had it also. I had postpartum anxiety. And I just think it's so important to peel back the layers, take away the stigma, and talk about it openly. So Senator Tina Smith, I appreciate you talking about that on this show. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Pamela.
Well, it's not just his former close friend cooperating with feds. Now Matt Gaetz' ex-girlfriend is talking too. Why that could be one of the most significant steps in the investigation. Up next. Well, another domino falls in the federal investigation into Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. CNN has learned that his ex-girlfriend, who was a staffer on Capitol Hill, has agreed to cooperate with authorities. Well, she's the second witness the feds have flipped after Gaetz' former close friend Joel Greenberg recently entered a plea deal with the Justice Department. In exchange, Greenberg will cooperate in the probe involving allegations of sex trafficking and sex with a minor. Gaetz has repeatedly denied all these allegations. CNN senior legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Preet Bharara joins me now. Good to see you as always, Preet. So you have this ex-girlfriend of Gaetz. She has knowledge of his activities in the summer of 2017 and is now cooperating with investigators. How significant is this?
Well, it's not good for Matt Gaetz. Anytime you have information, assuming it's correct, that someone is flipping against you and has information about your activities, material information that prosecutors deem significant enough that they want to enter into an arrangement with you. What I don't know, and is not clear from the reporting, is whether she has any criminal exposure herself. That changes the circumstances somewhat. But the other reason it's significant, depending on what information she has, is the principal cooperating witness that you mentioned, Joel Greenberg, is a very, very unsavory character. He has lied before. He has lied about things that are very, very serious with respect to political opponents. He has pled guilty to that lie. He's pled guilty to other serious crimes, including sex trafficking of a minor. And so the more additional witnesses who are less unsavory you can have if there's a potential trial after a potential charge against Matt Gaetz, the better. And depending on how much the congressman shared with his former girlfriend, illicit activities, other corroborating issues, I think it could be fairly significant, but we don't know the extent, of course.
So basically, what you point out, what Gates has said repeatedly, that Greenberg is not credible, that he has lied before. As we know in our reporting, Greenberg has told investigators that Gates had sexual contact with the 17-year-old girl. Gates has repeatedly denied that. But bottom line, what I hear you saying, Preet, is that Greenberg has serious credibility problems, and that would be an issue for prosecutors trying to build the case. But if you have another key witness, like an ex-girlfriend who also has knowledge and can corroborate what Greenberg has told investigators, that could really move the needle significantly.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a witness like Joel Greenberg, the immediate reaction of your average good faith juror is going to be not to like that person, and prosecutors have a lot of ways that they talk about that, and they respond to that and rebut that by talking. You know, that we say things like, or at least in my old life, you don't have to like or love the witness, you just have to believe the witness. And he is not only unlikable, given some of the conduct he's engaged in, he has a credibility problem. So the more you can show that everything that he's saying, that witness is saying, that unsavory and person laden with credibility problems is saying, is corroborated by texts, is corroborated by bank records, or Venmo records, as the case may be, or another witness who doesn't have any reason to lie, who's not trying to get out of jail early, who doesn't have any bone to pick, then you bolster your case. So yeah, I think it's very significant. And the likelihood is that they're chasing after other people as well, who will be credible witnesses and corroborate probably what the core of their case is, the things that Joel Greenberg is saying.
And that makes sense. So I was told by a source that they were almost done, but then we were just told through sources that the timeline has been extended through the summer in terms of the investigation, which means they could have more witnesses to talk to. We know they've talked to new people just this past month. It's interesting to watch the congressman through all of this, right? Normally, if you're a high-profile person who is under investigation and that has come out, you kind of go under the radar. That has not been the case with Matt Gaetz. He's out on tour promoting the 2020 election lie. I was told by a source as of a couple weeks ago, Preet, that he had not spoken to investigators. What does that tell you?
Well, it doesn't necessarily tell you anything definitive, but from all the reporting, it looks like they're building a case. They probably have, it just seems from everything we're hearing, one or more counts that they can bring, that they're shoring up those counts, that maybe there's other counts they may bring. And at that point, there's no reason, and there's actually, policy reasons not to talk to the target. Once you know you're going to charge someone, obviously they have a right not to speak. He probably would be better off not speaking to investigators, and is obviously better off not speaking aloud at all about any of this stuff. But in the category of target that Matt Gaetz is in, significant figure, subset of which is even more special, elected official, he has a PR and reputational interest also in shrugging off the charges, in gaining political momentum, and maybe trying to convince people in a potential jury pool that this is a witch hunt. The chant of witch hunt is something that we see all the time, from the former president on down, going back decades and decades. So he's doing what's best for him in the short term, and what may be a good short-term strategy for him politically usually ends up being a bad legal strategy long-term.
All right, Preet Bharara, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And coming up right here in the newsroom. We're turning now to a heart-wrenching admission from Prince Harry, who describes waking up to his wife Meghan crying in her pillow. Prince Harry and his brother William are slamming the BBC as well after a report found one of their journalists used deceptive tactics to get an interview with their mother, Princess Diana. Here's CNN's Max Foster.
Discussing the collapse of her marriage with Prince Charles nearly 26 years ago. And now Prince William and Prince Harry are slamming the BBC after an independent investigation commissioned by the broadcaster revealed how journalist Martin Bashir secured the interview with their late mother.
It brings indescribable sadness to know that the BBC's failures contributed significantly to her fear, paranoia and isolation that I remember from those final years with her.
The 127-page report concluding Bashir used deceitful behaviour and created fake bank statements to arrange the meeting with Diana. It also criticised the actions of the BBC, saying that without justification, the BBC covered up its press logs, such facts as it had been able to establish about how Mr Bashir secured the interview. The Duke of Cambridge also noting his concerns about how the BBC ignored alarm bells about Bashir's campaign to gain access to his mother.
But what saddens me most is that if the BBC had properly investigated the complaints and concerns first raised in 1995, my mother would have known that she had been deceived.
Prince Harry spreading the blame not only to the BBC, but also to coverage of Diana by other outlets and publications at the time. Writing in a statement, he said, "To those who've taken some form of accountability, thank you for owning it. That's the first step towards justice and truth." Yet what deeply concerns me is that practices like these, and even worse, are still widespread today. The Duke of Sussex, who's had his own issues with tabloids, recently discussing his ongoing struggles with his mother's death and the steps he's taking to heal.
I was so angry with what happened to her and the fact that there was no justice at all.
Speaking to Oprah Winfrey for a new streaming series the two created about mental health for Apple TV+, Harry said he turned to alcohol as an escape.
I was willing to drink, I was willing to take drugs, I was willing to try and do the things that made me feel less like I was feeling. But I slowly became aware that, okay, I wasn't drinking Monday to Friday, but I would probably drink a week's worth in one day on a Friday or a Saturday night.
In the same programme, Harry talked about comforting his wife, Meghan, who he said broke down and cried over, quote, the combined effort of the firm and the media to smear her over allegations that she'd bullied members of staff, allegations that first appeared in the Times newspaper. Those bullying allegations are being investigated by an independent law firm. Max Foster, CNN, Hampshire, England.
And up next on the Saturday Sweet with the satisfying crunch, how one candy company is cashing in on the cicada invasion. Well, if you can't beat them, how about eating them instead? I just want to warn you, if you're eating right now, actually watching this segment, you're going to want to probably put that aside. It turns out those masses of insanely noisy cicadas that are just now waking from their 17-year slumber, well, they can be a tasty snack too, allegedly. I personally have not tried it. I never will. But this Maryland candy company is selling that something for insect lovers with a sweet tooth, chocolate-covered cicadas. And before you go trying to dip your own, wait a second. Outlets owner Sarah Dwyer says first you dip them in boiling water and then coat them in oil and spices. I can barely get through this. I'm so sick to my stomach reading about this. Coat them in oil and spices, and then, and this is how you get that satisfying crunch, they're air fried before being dropped in chocolate. I'd say get them while stocks last, but there are literally billions of them, so enjoy. Your next hour of CNN Newsroom starts right now.